want to talk to you about the fact that it only takes one attack on U.S. soil to wake up the American people. It only took one attack on 9/11 for 10 years for the American people to to not only wake up, but within 10 years they became complacent and forgot about the attacks on American soil. Over almost 3,000 people died during 9/11. And the American people woke up. Suddenly, patriotism was important. Somehow, protecting the country was important. But it only took one single attack for people to wake up. Even the news media, the liberal news media, was behind George Bush. Yes, George Bush. George W. Bush, of all people. You had CNN, NBC, everybody was behind our president, and he was considered a hero. History showed that Bush really took matters in his own hands and protected this country from further terrorist attack. But it only took one terrorist attack, folks. It only took one. A generation of young people grew up loving America, loving to protect our country because human life mattered. All of a sudden, 12 years later or so, people forgot. And a new generation of brainwashed young people in liberalism, they just thought, oh my goodness, this is horrible. We shouldn't be protecting our country. We should be one globalist country, one globalist world where all the nations are as one, Captain Planet, propaganda, and everything else. So, but it only took one terrorist attack to bring the country together. Now, we're dealing with a situation here. A bill is about to be passed. Hopefully, people remember the things that happened 9/11. But many times people don't. Every day, our liberal media puts out propaganda to cause the American people to forget that their country is important, that their lives are important, that their children's lives are important. Everyone has been given this propaganda through the comedians, through talk show hosts, accusing people who want to protect our nation as racist. Is that even logical? It takes a cultural Marxist. It takes a person who's more interested in Russia's agenda than what's good for America to think that protecting your own nation is racist. That is asinine, to say the least. You know, no wonder, I'm not going to go there about the Democrat mascot, but you know where I'm going with that. But an elephant doesn't forget. One of the qualities of the elephant is that it doesn't forget when there's an issue, it remembers. It's one of those things about the elephant. It happens to be the mascot of the Republican Party, and but we don't forget. We don't forget our families. We don't forget the value of human life. We don't forget the value of protecting our country. For goodness sake, look what's happening in Europe right now. If you're paying attention to it, if you're not hooked on your entertainment contraptions, Europe is disintegrating, rioting, protests, terrorist attacks are going on all the time. There is no safety. There's not as much safety here in those countries. But here, there is a lot of safety. We don't have as many terrorist attacks, although we do have a lot of violence in our cities. And, and it's a lot of issues in the Democrat-controlled areas. But the issue here right now is that we have a bill that's trying to be passed, and it's to protect the country through the southern border. Now, I remember it must have been in 2012 or 2011 or so that Al Qaeda operatives came across the border through the southern border. And the media talked about it for about 2 days, and they forgot about it. The American people forgot about it. They don't realize that Al Qaeda operatives actually came up through the southern border. And people were aware of it. People became outraged. But then, of course, they wanted to talk more about other issues. But this was during Obama's watch that we had the Marks Brigade or something like that who came up from the southern border. And of course, the media didn't want to talk about it too much because it brought the aspect of border security to bear. And for some reason, the Democrat voter and the Democrat politician has to ask themselves, why is protecting your own country fellow Americans and your own lives not worth so much to you? Why is it so not important? You have got to ask yourself that question. Why isn't why is protecting your own country, living in a safe country that has its a basic way of protecting itself through a southern border, why is that not important to you? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Why is it not important to you enough to protect it? Why is why does America why is America not worth that much to you? If you love something, if you're going to protect it. If you love your family, you're going to value it. You're going to protect them. You're not going to leave your doors wide open. It doesn't make sense. Is it because they called you racist? Is it because they called you a name? Well, you need to grow a pair. You need to grow up. You need to understand that people will always call you names for doing the right thing, for not joining the club. Do you realize that just because you've got a mass of people who've been brainwashed like zombies to not protect their country, just because you've got a bunch of people who are like that does not mean that they're right. Because we know that your media is controlled, is influenced by socialist billionaires and millionaires. They want cheap labor. They don't really value the Latino. They don't really value the Mexican. They just want them to come over here for cheap labor. And that sometimes that comes from both sides of the party. Other times you got those who just want voters, like the Democrat Party. They just want new voters. They don't care how many Americans are sacrificed, just as long as they can shift the election, get more uninformed voters in America, because they only care about power, being that they're fascists, international fascists. That's the history. Look what they've done in Europe right now, the liberal governments, the workers' union parties, and those type of things. They wanted cheap labor. They brought people from all over the world because of the failure of their own policies of destroying the family, weakening the traditional family. They're not reproducing fast enough. And what's happening? Oh dear, we're not reproducing fast enough. Our nation's dying out. We're getting old, because they didn't value human life. They've aborted their children. They've taught them gender confusion policies. And now they're not reproducing fast enough. Even Russia has figured that out. After they demoralized and subverted other nations, they've also subverted themselves. And now Vladimir Putin is paying people to have children. But what does a liberal do to cover up their mistakes? They invite everybody to come in, and they don't care about an ideology that wants to oppress them and control their nation. And yet they're so focused on name calling that they're weak, and they don't worry about protecting their own country due to the failure of their liberal policies, which they've turned into a religion, a government worshiping religion of liberalism. And that's where you're at right now. You're the part of the last vestiges of the failed Roman Empire, where you have people who practiced Roman policies and stuff like that. They devalued the family. Now they're not reproducing. So Rome had to conquer more nations, bring in more people. Eventually, they withered away. After the senators were doing immoral acts on the children, they've corrupted the next generation, and now they had to fight more battles and stuff. And basically, the Roman Empire failed. And this is what's happening around the world through this globalism of liberalism. And it's failing. When you don't value the family, you don't value people's lives, you're going to be destroyed by whatever group of people who are predominant, who's the majority. So this is where the liberal is. This is where a lot of the atheist-led governments go. This is their doom. This is the failure of those policies. And right now we have an opportunity to protect the voter, protect American people of every shade, of every culture. It doesn't matter what your race is. We are all Native Americans. If you were born in this country, you're a Native American. Stop allowing liberal Democrats and their racism to pitch you as a racist just because you are a Native American. The Democrat Party is the party of racism, and they still use it today to keep us divided, keep blacks divided, keep Latinos divided, keep minorities disenfranchised, all for votes. And this is why you need to wake up. And this is why you need to stop voting blindly and listening to the popular celebrities, the rich celebrities who are multimillionaires and somewhat billionaires, who really don't care about your life in the first place. They just want some money, and they only care about themselves and their little clique. Don't think that they're just there to entertain you. They're all about money. And there's a Hollywood elite that is all about just using their position to influence you to think like a cultural Marxist and to believe their Russian inspired propaganda. That's right. The liberal media is inspired by so much of such propaganda. And I'm talking about the old Russia propaganda, the subversion tactic Russia propaganda. They've never gotten rid of it ever since the time of the blacklisting of Hollywood, where they blacklisted conservative, and they still do it today, celebrities and actors and actresses. They're doing it today, but now it's like they control Hollywood already. The comedians, all 10 major comedians that people listen to, are all pushing old Russia propaganda. I don't know about the new Russia propaganda, but as long as we're weakening our own nation, we're doing Russia's bidding, even today. So right now, we have an opportunity to protect our country. And right now, you have to ask yourself, why isn't protecting your nation important to you? And then you've got to ask yourself, why in the world am I voting for politicians who don't want to protect my own nation of America? I tell you the truth as I close. It only takes one dirty bomb attack to wake up a nation. It only takes one nuclear attack on a city like New York to finally wake up, and suddenly, bing, bing, the light bulb comes on over their head, and they said, oh, our country's worth protecting. Wow, where have I been? What have I been doing? What have I been thinking? Why isn't protecting our country? All it takes is one dirty bomb attack, which is a nuclear attack. Doesn't have to be major. But now that radiation is leached all over the soil, I thought you cared about the environment, Democrats, environmentalists. I thought you cared about your waterways. I thought you cared about clean water and clean air. But radioactivity and radiation permeates throughout the air, permeates through the soil for years, for decades upon decades. You can't use that land. Once a radioactive thing gets blown up in your city, it contaminates it for decades. Look at Chernobyl. It's still radioactive. People can't live there without birth defects and problems. Who are you going to sue then? Are you going to sue yourself? No. Are you going to sue the government? No, because your policies that you've elected caused that to happen. Your lack of foresight caused that to happen. This is why you need to be an informed citizen, united with others. Otherwise, you will be an oppressed, scared, weak, powerless people, like other nations controlled by despots and dictators who paved the way to their power through liberal policies. And your liberal policies are paving the way to a dictatorship led by a socialist leader. All of your dictators were socialists. And why in the world can't you learn from history? Hitler, Mussolini, all the guys from Russia, socialists. China, socialists. Venezuela, socialists. This is where it leads. They weaken your country through your liberal policies and the hand-me-downs and giveaways until your entitlement system falls apart, and then you have to elect their dictatorship because now there's social unrest. Why can't we just be free and not be oppressed? You need to wake up and watch who you're voting for, because right now the socialists control the Democrat Party. And unless you start voting differently and encouraging others to think and vote differently, we're going the same direction. Wake up, young people. Wake up. Because all it takes is one attack on American soil. And right now, we could be one election away from such a liberal dictatorship that's going to open the doors for more attacks on this country. Yet you're going to elect someone who wants more government control. And also, by the way, they want to disarm you like all socialists do, like Hitler did and Mussolini. If fascism is going to come to America, as Ronald Reagan said, it's going to come through the Democrat Party. Wake up. Thank you. And God bless America.